Doris Day talks about her true feelings. Abbott John Denver. Doris Day was born Doris Mary Kaphoff on April 3, 1922 in Cincinnati, Ohio. Her childhood wasn't an easy one. Her parents split up when she was young, and she found comfort in dancing, singing, and performing. At first, she dreamed of being a professional dancer, but a car accident as a teenager broke that dream, leaving her with injuries that ended her hopes of having a career on stage as a dancer. What could have been a terrible setback instead changed her life toward music. And it was while getting better from the accident that Doris found out how powerful her voice was. She began toesing along with the radio, developing warm, clear sound and perfect timing that would later win over audiences. A lover of the world, her professional career began in the late 1930s and early 1940s, when she joined local bands and began performing as a singer. It was during this time that she took on the stage name Doris Day, suggested by band leader Barney, who felt her real last name Kaphoff was too long for marquees and too hard for audiences to remember. With her natural talent and girl-next-door charm, Doris quickly got people's attention. She became the lead singer with Les Brown and his famous band. And in 1945, she recorded her first hit, Sentimental Journey. The song touched the hearts of American soldiers coming home from World War II, and it made Day a famous name. Her popularity as a singer soon opened doors to Hollywood, where she started acting. Doris Day made her first movie in Romance on the High Seas in 1948, and audiences right away fell in love with her fresh-faced beauty, bright smile, and natural screen presence. Over the next 20 years, she starred in many successful musical comedies, romantic comedies, and dramas, proving she could act in many different ways. Some of her most memorable films include Calamity Jane in 1953, where her energetic performance and powerful singing voice won praise from critics, and Love Me or Leave Me in 1955, which showed off her dramatic acting in the story of singer Ruth Etting. She also starred in Alfred Hitchcock's thriller classic, The Man Who Knew Too Much in 1956, in which she sang one of her most famous songs, Que Sera, Sera, Whatever Will Be Will Be. Throughout the 1950s and 1960s, Doris Day became the perfect example of wholesome American womanhood. She often starred with leading men like Rock Hudson and James Garner in romantic comedies such as Pillow Talk in 1959, Lover Come Back in 1961, and Move Over, Darling in 1963. These films made tons of money at movie theaters and made her reputation as the queen of light-hearted romance solid. Her on-screen chemistry with Rock Hudson especially became legendary, and the two stayed close friends off-screen, with Day later becoming one of the few people in Hollywood to publicly support Hudson during his fight with AIDS in the 1980s. Despite her cheerful screen image, Doris Day's personal life was often hard. She was married 4 times, and many of his relationships ended in heartbreak or money trouble. Most notably, her third husband and manager, Martin Melker, handled her money badly and left her deeply in debt. After his death in 1968, Doris found out that her fortune had been wasted, and she was forced to take on projects she had not wanted, such as The Doris Day Show, a television comedy that ran from 1968 to 1973. Although she didn't want to do television at first, her natural charm and comedic timing made the show a success, and it helped her get her money back. By the mid-1970s, Doris Day decided to step away from the entertainment business and live a quieter life. She moved to Carmel by the Sea, California, where she focused her energy on animal welfare, a cause that became her true passion. She started the Doris Day Animal League and the Doris Day Pet Foundation, working tirelessly for the humane treatment of animals. Her devotion to protecting animals earned her huge respect and admiration, and she became as well known for her advocacy as for her career in show business. Doris Day stayed a private person in her latter years, rarely giving interviews and preferring the company of her pets to the Hollywood spotlight. However, her legacy continued to grow as new generations discovered her music and films. Her voice, full of warmth and honesty, stayed timeless, and her performances on screen still captivate audiences decades after they came out. Doris Day's personal life was often as dramatic and complicated as the role she played on screen, and much of it centered around her 4 marriages, each of which shaped her in different ways. Her first marriage was to trombone player Earl Jordan, 1917 to 1967, whom she met while performing with Barney Rapp's band in the early 1940s. Their marriage, which lasted from April 1941 until February 1943, was stormy and deeply unhappy. Jordan was known to be violent and emotionally unstable, suffering from what was later understood to be schizophrenia. Their relationship quickly became abusive, and Day later told people that he was a controlling man who lashed out in fits of jealousy and rage. When she became pregnant, Jordan pressured her to have an abortion, something she firmly refused because of her strong moral beliefs and her desire to be a mother. His violent response to her decision was horrifying. He physically attacked her, trying to cause a miscarriage. Despite this terrifying experience, Doris gave birth to her only child, a son named Terrence Paul Jordan, in 1942. Though Doris divorced Jordan in 1943, the pain of that marriage left lasting scars on her life. Jordan eventually killed himself years later, tragically showing the mental illness that troubled him. Doris's son, Terry, would later take the last name of Melcher when he was legally adopted by her third husband, a change that also marked a turning point in his life and career after her divorce from Jordan. Doris looked for stability and companionship in her second marriage, this time to George William Weidler, 1926 to 1989, a talented saxophone player and the younger brother of actress Virginia Weidler, who had been a child star in Hollywood. Doris married George on March 30, 1946, but once again, the relationship proved hard to keep going. The marriage lasted until May 31, 1949, ending in divorce after only 3 years. Despite their separation, the two did reconnect briefly in later years, and during that time, Weidler introduced Doris to the teachings of Christian Science, a religion that emphasizes spiritual healing and faith over traditional medical treatment. Although their marriage was relatively short-lived and produced no children, Weidler's influence on Doris's spiritual life would echo for decades, shaping her views on health, illness, and the power of prayer. The most significant and longest-lasting of Doris Day's marriages was her third to American film producer Martin Melcher, 1915 to 1968. The two married on April 3, 1951, her 29th birthday, and their union lasted until his death in 1968. Melcher played a huge role in Doris's career, producing many of her films and managing much of her professional life. He also legally adopted Doris's son, Terry, giving him the last name Melcher, which he carried through to his career as a successful music producer. Doris and Melcher shared a deep commitment to Christian Science, and this faith influenced many of Doris's personal choices. For instance, when she later began experiencing physical symptoms that might have suggested a serious illness, Doris avoided seeking medical attention for some time, sticking instead to Christianity's principles of spiritual healing. Her devotion to the faith, however, began to shift after Melcher's sudden death in 1968. Following his passing, Doris began to distance herself from the strict practices of the Church of Christianity, though she never abandoned the belief system entirely. Instead, she grew close to charismatic Protestant figures such as Catherine Kuhlman, who became a source of comfort and inspiration during her grief. Doris' evolving spiritual journey reflected both her loyalty to her faith and her openness to seeking comfort in new forms of religious expression. Doris Day's fourth and final marriage was to Barry Comden, 1935 to 2009, a maitre d' at one of her favorite restaurants. Their relationship began in an unusual, tendering way. Knowing of her great affection for animals, especially dogs, Comden captured her heart by presenting her with a bag of meat scraps and bones as she left the restaurant, a thoughtful gift for her beloved pets. The gesture was perfectly suited to Doris' personality, as her lifelong devotion to animals would later define much of her humanitarian work. The couple married on April 14, 1976, but the marriage ultimately did not last. Their union ended in divorce on April 2, 1982, after 6 years of marriage. Comden later expressed frustration that Doris's love and attention seemed to be directed more toward her animal friends than toward him. His comments, while bitter, underscored a truth about Doris's life in her later years. Her deepest fulfillment came not from romantic partnerships, but from her bond with her animals and her work advocating for their welfare. When Doris Day was asked in later years about her impressions of John Denver, she spoke with warmth, admiration, and a deep sense of kinship that reflected both her appreciation for his artistry and her recognition of the values he carried into his music. Doris, known for her sunny screen presence and her golden voice, often connected most with artists who sang from the heart, and John Denver was one of those figures who touched her profoundly. "I thought John Denver was one of the most genuine people I ever met in show business," she once said. And that is not something you could say about everyone. For Day, whose career had taken her through the sometimes cutthroat and fake world of Hollywood, Denver's sincerity was like a breath of fresh air. Day was particularly struck by the way Denver's songs celebrated life, nature, and the simple joys of existence. As she explained, "When I heard him sing about sunshine, about country roads, about the beauty of the mountains, it felt he was singing directly from his soul. There was no pretense. He wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was sharing his heart." Coming from a woman who had long been associated with wholesome optimism, it is telling that she recognized in Denver a kindred spirit who also carried lightness, hope, and gentleness into the world of entertainment. For Doris, Jones' music offered the same comfort and positivity she had always tried to give her audiences, making her feel an almost spiritual bond with him. Another aspect Doris admired deeply was Denver's humility. Unlike many artists of his stature, Denver never seemed to allow fame to distort his character. "He was a superstar," Doris remarked, "but had never carried himself like one. He didn't have an ego that filled the room. He had a kindness about him, an openness, and that is rare." Day herself had struggled with the trappings of celebrity, often feeling more at peace with her animals at her Carmel Valley home than in Hollywood circles. That Denver, too, preferred a quieter, more natural lifestyle resonated with her strongly. She found his devotion to environmental causes not only admirable but essential, calling him a pioneer in reminding us to love and care for the earth. Doris Day also related to Joan Denver's ability to communicate through his songs. Though she had spent her career carefully navigating the image of the girl next door, her recordings often revealed a woman with great emotional depth. Songs such as Secret Love or I'll Never Stop Loving You carried a sense of longing and tenderness that paralleled the bittersweet honesty of Denver's ballads. John could take a simple lyric and make you feel the ache of it. She explained, he had a gift for showing his heart in a way that never felt forced. It was simply who he was. To Doris, this was true mark of artistry. Not technical perfection alone, but the courage to let the world glimpse one's innermost self. The two also shared a connection through their mutual love of animals and advocacy for compassion. Day, of course, dedicated the latter half of her life to her Animal Welfare Foundation, tirelessly campaigning for the humane treatment of creatures great and small. Denver similarly used his platform to support not only environmental awareness but also humane causes. Doris noted this alignment with gratitude. "It meant a lot to me to see someone with his fame use it for something more than applause. He cared about the world, about creaturia had no voice. And that to me is the highest purpose of celebrity." Day was candid too about the tragedy of Denver's untimely passing in 1997. She admitted that his death left her with a profound sense of loss. "I cried when I heard the news," she confessed. "It felt like the world had lost a gentle poet. We don't have enough of those." For someone like Doris, who had survived the ups and downs of Hollywood, the premature loss of a voice so full of light was a poignant reminder of the fragility of life. She often wished his legacy would be cherished by younger generations, not only for the melodies, but for the message of hope, simplicity, and respect for nature that his music carried. In closing her reflections, Doris Day summed up her feelings in words that perfectly captured her deep respect and quiet admiration. "I will always treasure John Denver because he represented the best of what music can be. He wasn't just singing. He was teaching us to see the beauty in our lives, to love one another, and to be grateful. That is what I tried to do too in my own way. And for that I will always feel connected to him." In these heartfelt remarks, Doris Day reveled not only her admiration for John Denver, but also a glimpse into her own philosophy that art at its best is about love, sincerity, and a gentle reminder of life's most important truths. Doris Day died of pneumonia at her home in Carmel Valley, California on May 13, 2019 at the age of 97. Her death was announced by the Doris Day Animal Foundation. As requested by Day, the foundation announced that there would be no funeral services, grave marker, or other public memorials.